All right, today we're going to dive into one of Charles Dickens' absolute masterpieces, Great Expectations. It's this incredible coming-of-age story, all about ambition and class. But really, at its heart, it asks one very unsettling question.
Just think about that for a second. This one question is the engine that drives the entire novel. And it's not just some philosophical idea, it's the reality our main character, Pip, has to face when he finds out his entire life, his whole identity, has been a sham.
So, let's meet our guy. We start with young Pip, an orphan living a pretty tough life. He's being raised by his, let's just say, very harsh sister, and her husband, Joe Gargery, who's a super kind blacksmith. Pip's future looks pretty set. He's going to work at the forge. But then, two encounters happen that completely flip his world upside down.
Okay, so these are the four people who are going to shape everything for Pip. You've got Joe, who's basically his moral compass. Then there's Miss Havisham, this wealthy, kind of spooky woman who's literally frozen in time. You have Estella, who is beautiful but cold as ice. And then there's this escaped convict, Magwitch. Remember that name? He holds the key to everything.
So the first big event. Pip is out on these foggy marshes, and he runs into that escaped convict. He's terrified, but he helps the guy out, gives him some food. The second, he gets summoned to this creepy mansion to play with Estella, under the watchful eye of the strange Miss Havisham. Now these two moments feel totally disconnected, right? Well, they're not. They're the two hinges his entire future is about to swing on.
And then bam, seemingly out of nowhere, a lawyer shows up. He announces that Pip has a secret benefactor and is coming to a huge fortune. The deal is he has to leave his home immediately, move to London, and learn how to be a gentleman. And in Pip's mind, there's only one person it could be, the wealthy Miss Havisham.
So Pip is off to London. He's got money, he's got a new life, and he's totally convinced this is his ticket to winning over Estella. He jumps headfirst into being a gentleman. But, it doesn't take long for that perfect dream to start showing some serious cracks.
And this is really the tragic trade-off Pip makes. He chases wealth and status, but what does he get? A mountain of debt and a feeling of being totally empty inside. He thinks his money will help him win Estella, but it just makes him feel more alone and ashamed. And probably the worst part, his quest to become a gentleman makes him look down on the only true gentleman he's ever known, his loyal friend Joe.
Yeah, Pip is learning a really tough lesson here. Being a gentleman has absolutely nothing to do with fancy clothes or a London apartment. He starts seeing the ugly truth behind all the social climbing he's been doing, and the whole foundation of his great expectations starts to feel pretty shaky.
So just as Pip is wrestling with all this, his own snobbery, his disappointment, the story takes its biggest, most dramatic turn. Get ready, because the truth about where all that money came from is about to come out.
For years, Pip has been operating under this one huge assumption that Miss Havisham was secretly funding his life, all as part of some grand plan to pair him up with Estella. He built everything on that belief, and, well, he couldn't have been more wrong.
Pip's fortune didn't come from a respectable aristocrat. Nope, it came from the lowest rung of society, from Abel Magwitch, the convict from the marshes. All the money that turned him into a gentleman came from a criminal he helped as a terrified little boy. And this revelation it detonates his entire world. His sense of self, his snobbery, everything he thought was true, it's all gone.
And this, honestly, is where the book becomes truly brilliant. With all his pride and his so-called expectations lying in ruins, Pip is finally forced to look at who he's become and figure out what actually matters. His real education starts right here.
This all forces us to ask that central question. What does it really mean to be a gentleman? Pip thought it was about money and status and talking proper. But Dickens shows us that's all just window dressing. True gentility, true class, is about kindness, loyalty, and humility. The exact qualities that Joe, the humble blacksmith, had all along.
Pip's journey back from all this is a tough one. It starts with him feeling this deep, crushing guilt over how he treated Joe, but then it grows as he starts to see Magwitch not as a scary convict, but as a person who sacrificed everything for him. He finally learns that loyalty and compassion are worth way more than any fortune.
So why are we still talking about this book, like 150 years later? It's simple, really. The problems and themes Dickens was tackling are just as relevant today as they were back then.
At its core, this novel is a scathing critique of a society that's obsessed with class.
Dickens is basically shouting that your social status has zero to do with your moral worth as a person. And that's a timeless warning, right? A warning against judging people by their bank accounts or what they do for a living.
And here's a fascinating little piece of trivia. Dickens actually rewrote the ending. He was talked out of his original, sadder ending. The one we have now is a bit more ambiguous. It's less about a fairy tale romance and more focused on the quiet, hard-won maturity and peace that Pip has finally found.
So it's really no surprise that our analysis rates this as a near-perfect literary masterpiece. It's just so psychologically deep, so emotionally powerful, and the plot is just brilliant. It absolutely earns all the praise it gets.
And that really brings us to the final takeaway. Dickens leaves us with this question that just hangs in the air. In our own lives, which are so often about ambition and keeping up appearances, what are we really chasing? What are our great expectations? And more importantly, what is the real cost of getting them?